All right. Yes. Thank you again. And to everyone that is here, thank you for taking an hour of your time uh, to join me today. And I am excited to get started. Thank you, Dr. Hibbs, for the kind introduction. Let's just get right into it. So, here is our agenda for today. We're going to go over some of the learning objectives, what the capstone is, and what are some key terms that are relevant to really understand the foundation of what has been built upon. Then we'll cover a literature review, conceptual paper, and practice application paper. Those are really the things that uh, were conceptualized to produce a final product, which is in manuscript form. This is the presentation form of that. Then I'll introduce the key findings, practice recommendations, and then we'll have a conclusion and wrap up. So to begin, the learning objectives for today, we want to consider what minority stress is and what is the impact on LGBTQ students in academic higher education, but also within social experiences as a contributing factor for attrition, burnout, and retention rates. We'll look at some of the limitations of traditional models in addressing unique challenges that are experienced by LGBTQ students. We'll consider intersections of systemic norms, how these factors influence academic success, and really contribute to the development of resilient social workers. And we are going to rethink the frameworks that were initially developed for these issues and talk about practice recommendations going forward. So here is an overview of the capstone. As I mentioned, the capstone product is a scaffolded product. So it begins with a systematic literature review, which is a really concise way of examining what exists, what literature is out there, what research is out there to determine that these are the things that have been done in the past. This is how it's helped or has not helped. And, there's always recommendations. There's typically recommendations at the end of research. And so from the systematic literature review, what I have done is scaffolded that into a conceptual paper. So I consider three different frameworks that I examined and then reconceptualized a novel framework to help address attrition and burnout rates in higher ed. And then finally, the practice application paper takes it a step further and says, based on these theoretical models, based on the literature and existing literature, this is what I think is going to contribute and help to solve said problem. So what is said problem, one might ask? The broad capstone topic, so this is not necessarily the research question, but an umbrella idea is I look at what is the post-pandemic minority stress impact, and we'll define what minority stress is and what it looks like. But what is that impact on LGBTQ student retention in higher ed? And for the context of this research, I consider higher education as four-year institutions, so it does not include community colleges in the literature. So let's move into some of the key terms. I know that we have a wide array of individuals on this Zoom call today, whether you're a practitioner, an educator, family member, someone that just saw it online, welcome, and thank you for being here. So let's define some key terms so we're all on the same page. So LGBTQ plus is often thrown around, but sometimes we, don't really consider what that plus includes. And so in the literature, we see many different acronyms used to identify sexual minorities or the LGBTQ community. So here it kind of outlines the full band of letters and their associated identities. And so beyond LGBTQ, there's questioning, we have intersex, asexual, allied, and you can kind of take a look for yourselves to read some of these definitions, pansexual and two-spirit, and that even does extend beyond what's modeled here. Um, and so really what I found is theoretical models and research on LGBTQ issues from more than 10 years ago often referred to individuals as LGB or LGBT. And now with my literature, what I've conceptualized, I try to build it to be a little bit more expansive, to be more holistic in nature. Now, I've thrown around the term minority stress quite a bit so far, and I want to define what minority stress is. So, minority stress refers to the additional stress experienced by members of stigmatized minority groups due to prejudice, discrimination, and other negative social experiences. So, this really is a chronic stress that is very distinct from general stress, and it's known to have a negative impact on physical, physiological, and mental health. And so I have put kind of the main tagline for us to keep in mind throughout this presentation at the bottom, which is minority stress is distinguished from general stress, stress that all people may experience, by its origin in prejudice and stigma. This is conceptualized by Meyer dating back to 1995, 1993, and then really recent literature in 2023 as well. So for those of us that are a little bit more visual learners, I have some examples of what this looks like. So what is minority stress? Some examples of minority stress may include a situation where Dakota was denied housing after a landlord suspects she is in a same-sex relationship. The second example of Cameron experiences verbal harassment for holding hands with their partner in public. This is an example of how it's rooted in prejudice, bias, microaggressions, and so on. Examples of generalized stress may be a biology final that's coming up. No matter the identity, no matter how, the whatever, we're all taking the same biology final. And we better have studied so that we get a good grade. Another example is Bailey feels the impact of an economic downturn on his ability to provide for his family. So if the economy, if there's stressors in the economy, regardless of identity or minority status, that is, or identity-based reasons, that's going to be a reason to have stress, but it's not minority stress. So I have a little quiz. Don't worry, y'all aren't going to get graded too harshly, but I have a couple questions just to check our understanding on minority stress. So the first check-in here is Paul is stressed. And to answer, you can answer in the chat. You can, drop a G or an M in the chat, but Paul is stressed because his apartment lease is ending soon, and he has not found a new place to live yet. Again, minority stress or generalized stress. The distinguishing factor here is stress that all people may experience versus origin and prejudice or stigma. Yes. All right. I can't see the chat, but I'm believing that you are answering in faith here. So we have generalized stress. This is a housing-related stressor that is rooted in logistics, not on identity-based bias. Here's another example. We've got two more. Leaving work on Valentine's Day, Whitney overhears coworkers make homophobic jokes about her wife in the parking lot, but feels unsafe reporting this to HR. Is this general stress or is this minority stress? Yeah, I see that the chat number is going up here.
Getting a bunch of minority stress. and
Very good.
M's in the chat.
Yes, that is minority stress. Minority stress, this stems from a hostile work environment rooted in sexual minority status, stigma, and discriminatory behavior, especially if Whitney does not feel safe to talk about this with HR. One more for our understanding. Emerson, who identifies as bisexual, is told by his healthcare provider that it's just a phase when disclosing his identity during the intake process. Would this be generalized or minority? Dr. Hips, help me out here.
Got a lot of minority and M's popping up in the chat.
Very good. Very good. So we are pros now on minority stress. So that is minority stress. It's a clear example of how this shows up in the medical system and medical bias through invalidation rooted in these principles. Very good. A plus for everyone. Next, we're going to talk about some key terms, including attrition. For the literature here, it's defined as student departure prior to degree completion. We talk about retention, and that's used in a variety of contexts, but we are talking specifically about the process of keeping individuals enrolled in higher ed institutions, aiming to prevent students from leaving before completing their academic degree program. And in higher ed, as I mentioned, we're looking at four-year colleges and universities. So in Meyer's minority stress model, there's two terms that are used often, including distal stressors and proximal stressors. So here, distal stressors refer to external objective events or conditions that create stress for members of minority groups. So again, this originates from individuals or institutions that can include things like discrimination, victimization, or rejection. So these could include more minor everyday experiences like being treated unfairly, or it could be a result of chronic stressors of living in poverty that are, if it's rooted in identity-based stressors as well. Then we've got proximal stressors, and this is from a socialization process where sexual or gender minorities learn to reject themselves for being LGBTQ, which often leads to what we call concealment of identity. And concealment can be really protective in some environments as a way of really like survival and making sure that you're protecting yourself, but also it limits access to social support. So if students in higher ed are constantly concealing identity, it's less likely that they're going to find supports, find faculty mentors, find community events that they can be a part of. And this just is a cyclical process that results in further stigma. And a couple more terms here. We've got homophobia, which is really defined as a range of behaviors, feelings, negative attitudes towards sexual variations of people. And then heteronormativity, in essence, this is the idea that there's a superior sexual orientation or identity, and it's a deeply embedded in belief. Let's talk about some background. So LGBTQ individuals are more likely to have less favorable outcomes and experiences than their heteronormative peers in areas of academic achievement and mental well-being, including social behavioral outcomes. We know that where non-affirming students, so we could also potentially say non-affirming heteronormative students on campus display oppressive or discriminatory behavior towards LGBTQ students, it's significant, and it can actually mold the way that the student feels about their institution at large, even if it's isolated events of students being victimized by non-affirming peers. So That can cause a lot of institutional um, biases and perceptions as well, even if the institution is supportive. Okay, the first 2 years, and this is something that I've added here in the background, but throughout the literature, the first 2 years of college really serves as a transitional period for establishing foundational knowledge necessary to go into the social work major. So there's often prerequisites. There are things that even internships that often happen before the social work major. And in the literature, I really focused on what are these 2 years and how is it necessary to foster a positive environment? Because if these pre-major social work students never get into the major, then we don't have social workers that are diverse in thought, that are out within the field doing the very good work and relating to clients. So it's necessary. The first 2 years are really, really foundational times. And then the background also includes that political shifts and limitations for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives contributes to restrictions, bans, reallocations of money, and closures. So this is a slide that I actually included kind of last minute here. And it is just screenshots from things that I see on the daily. And why did I put this in here? Well, LGBTQ research in higher education matters. So looking at what students need, and how faculty and staff and programs can show up for students is why this is the focus of my social work education concentration of the DSW program. Some of the current issues in LGBTQ higher education is that LGBTQ students are more likely to have lower self-esteem, increased likelihood for bullying, violence, and harassment. Research has indicated that social work students too struggle to fully accept other LGBTQ students. So this is actually even program specific as well. So support or absence of faculty connection and mentorship contributes to college experiences of sexual minorities. So I want to take a step back for a second. I've covered some of the background, covered some of the political stuff that's going on right now, and I thought it important to really hear from what students' feedback reflects. And some of these students have personal experiences with what it's like to be a social work student in a program that is not affirming. And so let's kind of cover what these students say. One student says a classmate was allowed to question why students had to be out and was allowed to say that with disgust in his voice. Professor did nothing to stand up for LGBTQ students in the classroom. It was extremely disappointing and made me feel unsafe. Another student says, many students in my program make homophobic, transphobic, or simply uninformed statements during class wherein professors will not speak out and correct them. Another student mentions, in an online assignment, 3 people started the discussion that they should have been warned about LGBTQ content that day and should have been allowed to not attend because of the content. No one else in the online discussion addressed this, nor did the professor. Some of the other things that were mentioned in the literature is there's negative and disapproving looks, attitudes, giggles, and whispers. Professors have made statements such as, if you choose to be gay, that's not my concern. Throughout the BSW and MSW programs at my university, there were a number of students who made derogatory comments. And in another class, sexual orientation and gender identity were only discussed through the form of joking about it or complaining about, quote, having to be tolerant. As far as homophobia goes, people have stated that homophobia isn't as serious or as real as racism, sexism, etc. And I was told in class discussion that if I was experiencing homophobia, I should just keep my mouth shut, quote, keep my mouth shut as a solution. So those are all statements that have been made by social work students in the research. And what does that tell us? Current efforts to address this still carries a we versus them mentality. The normals versus the, the non-normals, the we versus them. And so we have to really reconceptualize what support looks like. Another statement that I wanted to include in here, and I'll read it, is why it's important to address retention in higher ed. And a researcher says student attrition has been one of the most critical issues in higher ed for a long time. Low student retention rates might affect tertiary institutions in many different aspects, including their academic and financial plans. So it's important to deal with a critical issue through strategies and plans. It's essential for educators and policymakers who seek solutions for such a problem to have an understanding of the background. That's what this capstone is laying the background of the student retention phenomenon and the most frequent factors that lead students to leave their study programs. All right, I want to check in. Just drop like a thumbs up or something. How are we all doing here? I'm trusting that we're in here. We are minority stress experts at this point. Very good. So let's talk about the products here of the entire capstone product. Starting with product 1, which is chapter 2 of the capstone product. The research question posed is, how does minority stress impact the retention of pre-major LGBTQ students based on mental health factors in 4-year colleges and universities? So my search strategy is robust, but one of the resources that I utilize in searching for the research is librarian consultation. We are so thankful for our librarians that are so knowledgeable, especially the social sciences specific librarian that I was able to work with through the University of Kentucky. And really this assisted me to build great search strategies and refine my results. It was a consultative service that assisted me to put in the right terms to really solidify what I was looking for. The publication date range that I had was 2020 to 2024. Now, if you're a researcher out there, you're probably like, SOS, that's a pretty small window of research, but I find it important to consider the post-pandemic impact of, a lot of isolation happening. So I found it necessary to focus on the last 4 years, or I guess 5 years now. Older research is cited in some of the background that we can't change, like theories. Databases, I'll get into that a little bit more in the next slide here, but I used both subject-specific and interdisciplinary databases to find the research. And then I utilized a PICO framework, and without getting too in the weeds, but it's just a way of processing through and synthesizing the information. So this is a little screen grab from my paper, but I identified several databases, including Psychology and Behavioral Sciences, APA Psych Info, Social Work Abstract, and the Sociological Collection, Web of Science, and ProQuest. Really all of this just tells us that I started with a very large number of results, starting with 195 or 217. And then by the end of it, we got down to 23 articles that were reviewed for this literature review. And those were the articles that were really fine tooth comb through to get the results. This table talks about some of the terms and limits that I put onto my search strategy. So we see a lot of the terms in the middle column here, including pre-programmed students, undergrad, freshmen. You kind of have to play around to get these results across the different databases. And then this PICO framework talks through, we're looking at pre-program LGBTQ students attending four-year colleges and universities, both in the US and internationally, with undergraduate students being the target population. But in some of the articles, inevitably, they did include graduate level information as well, but that was still included here. We've talked about how the intervention is identifying stigma, mitigating unique stress, and implementing affirming support. The comparison included individuals. So I guess it would be considered LGBTQ individuals, minority stress individuals versus individuals that don't identify in that group. And then outcome, improved mental well-being among sexual minority students to successfully matriculate in their desired program of study. Collateral impact includes feelings of belonging, motivation to join the workforce, embracing their identity. So that's the hope here. When we are looking at our results, we as an I have found four key findings. The first being LGBTQ identity as a pre-existing health condition in college. So what does that mean? What I found is when LGBTQ students often enter college with past encounters of non-affirming behaviors, challenging family circumstances, and heightened minority stress, this poses threats as students transition into higher ed and begin that socialization process, begin that exploration process that all students experience, but with the extra weight of identity stress. The second key finding is related to minority stress and poor LGBTQ student academic outcomes. The research highlights interpersonal connections as an ecological aspect. Why am I mentioning ecology right now? Well, the ecological aspect is viewing the college ecosystem as just that, as an ecosystem. There's several aspects of a college campus, including institutional support, faculty support, student activities, community partners, family. And so minority stress impacting several systems is evident. And what we find is there can be poor adjustment, social isolation, and mental health, especially after the 2020 pandemic that lasted beyond 2020. The third key finding here is viewing faculty mentorship as an effective method of supporting LGBTQ students navigate unique challenges. Tailored support is part of faculty response to change, and so needing to support students through adverse experiences, discrimination, and stigma. That's the purpose of putting that other slide in here that talks about what are students saying about in the classroom. It's just because we're not familiar, we don't hear things, or maybe because we don't experience what students are experiencing doesn't mean it's not happening. And so students need to be prepared to discuss LGBTQ issues in higher ed. And what the research indicates is that this assists social workers that are soon to be practitioners, licensed social workers, and work in many different settings be prepared to make competent and informed decisions as practitioners. And the fourth finding from the literature review is that unresolved mental health concerns extend beyond the college environment. So if they're carried into college and they're also challenges that are faced within college that are identity-based, those often carry into the future as practitioners. And so this can pose additional risks. Even if students remain matriculated in programs of study, minority stress or unresolved adverse experiences may resurface in the workplace following graduation. And again, the first 2 years are pivotal. So if we target support services within the first 2 years, we're minimizing risk for students to taper off before getting matriculated. Now, what are some of the limitations that I faced or that I saw in the literature? Well, recent literature is used. So there was a 4-year window here that I was working off of. This research was started in 2023. And so now it's 2025. So we need more longitudinal studies across time to address this issue, to really understand the efficacy of interventions. And a second limitation is that it was one researcher, screening large quantities of articles. While it was a collaborative process towards the beginning of working with the librarian at large, it was me sitting at my desk, looking through a lot of these articles and finding connections. And so the lack of overt connections between COVID-19 and minority stress. A lot of articles don't explicitly say or mention those connections. Broad definitions of sexual minorities. Like I said, research uses many different ways of identifying sexual minorities, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. All right, the second product, which is equivalent to chapter 3 of my manuscript, is the conceptual paper. And so the conceptual paper title is Conceptualizing Retention, the Novel Maslow Minority Stress Model for LGBTQ Student Attrition in Higher Ed. So I took 3 frameworks that are pretty well known, I might say. Hierarchy of needs, minority stress theory, which we are all experts in, and retention theory. The purpose of focusing on these theories is to address limitations specific to the college environment, unique experiences of sexual minorities, and post-pandemic impacts of social isolation. There's several prior models that address needs and for medical models for trainees. When we talk about hierarchy of needs, I'll go back to this slide, but I want to show us, if you're not familiar, this is what it looks like. Really, Maslow identifies from the bottom up what is necessary to reach self-actualization, purpose, inner potential, authenticity. It starts with basic needs: food, water, shelter, air, safety, security, love and belonging, self-esteem, and then self-actualization. Some scholars say we're not sure if we ever get there. Some say we absolutely do. So it's, I guess, depends. And so taking this model, I wanted to rethink how this model could be applied to LGBTQ retention in higher ed. Now, what I've done, it looks like I flipped it on its head, but bear with me, and we're going to kind of walk through this here. the purpose of me reconceptualizing is some of the language from Maslow in 1943 just does not seem very culturally responsive to what the current environment is. So Maslow mentions a stupid man behaves stupidly, not because he wants to, tries to, but simply because he is what he is. A man is a perpetually wanting animal. That kind of struck me, and I was like, we're more than animals. We are uh, educated individuals going on to do big things. And so let's talk about minority stress in Maslow. So what I've done is taken this model, and instead of thinking as a flipped upside down pyramid, think of it more as like a flashlight that's illuminating a path forward. Another way to view it is this. So let me explain. On the top, the point of this model is to get to student retention actualization. Now, the degree of resilience and belonging is along the side here. And throughout the literature, what I find is LGBTQ students do not enter college automatically feeling safety and security. They're wary of campus climate, political concerns, safety concerns. And so we start to build from internal to external. So what I've conceptualized is with the increase of visibility, empowerment, peer and community connection, social inclusion, it starts to illuminate forward a path that feels safe, that feels academically rigorous, but you're able to reach that full potential socially and then even in practice. And the goal here is to, again, remain connected to your program so that you do graduate and even go on to do, master's degree or doctoral level studies as well. So this is another way of conceptualizing this. We already discussed the majority of what this looks like, but for those who are visual learners, I've created a map that really connects ways that things are promoted, the ways that things are informed. So again, the conceptual map is focused on minority stress, LGBTQ college students impacting retention. It addresses, in theory, and if anyone wants to read this, I don't know how long the manuscript is, I will send it to you. Just send me an email at the end, but it goes through what all of this looks like through a constructivist approach. So that is really a subjective way of focusing on individual lived experiences and considering several identities. LGBTQ students, that is not their only identity. There are additional cultural considerations. There are demographic, location considerations. So someone that is going to New York University may have a very different experience than someone that goes to a small college in Arkansas. I don't know, I just made that up. But so this is a way of framing a previous theory and building upon it. And the focus, taking the conceptual paper of the Maslow minority stress model and bringing that into practice, is to focus on what practice intervention can withstand current efforts to dismantle or weaken diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and bring about inclusive safe spaces to improve retention rates of LGBTQ social work students. All right, we are moving into our third product, but before we do that, let me just paint a picture of what one student may be experiencing in present day in practice. Alex, a transgender student, graduated high school and moved to college with hopes of a fresh start, gaining confidence in the next phase of life. In the first week, Alex faced frequent misgendering and exclusion from peer groups, leading to feelings of isolation. The constant need to correct others microaggressions, lack of inclusive spaces, heightened Alex's anxiety and depression. Even when seeking LGBTQ Center for Students, a sign indicated that it had been permanently closed. Alex was left with greater feelings of vulnerability without the support of their institution. So what I'm proposing is a program titled Supporting Academic Flourishing for Everyone, Safe Seal Training. This is a one-time asynchronous trauma-informed faculty development training taught through the lens of Maslow minority stress, the reconceptualized framework that we saw, the upside down pyramid there. It's housed in social work programs available to all faculty and focused on prevention through a minority stress lens rather than crisis intervention, which is often the models of support, like the safe centers, LGBTQ centers that are modeled in this scenario. Students often go there to seek refuge. Let's pivot that and focus on how can faculty show up for students. Anticipated outcome includes empowering faculty to mitigate harmful discourse in the classroom or online that carries that weight of minority stress status, and improve belonging and social inclusion of sexual minorities in the campus experience, improving retention. So some of the pragmatic implications and how this rolls out is we want to look at faculty to reconsider ways that it appears in the classroom setting. So I always live by this saying, I'm trying to remember it now, but you can't blame someone for something they know nothing about. And I say that because I think that's necessary as we think through current support models and future support models, that if faculty are just uninformed, or maybe they know what the research says, but don't know the nuances and how this shows up in classroom, online platforms. We're talking Canvas, learning management systems, Blackboard, Moodle, Google Classroom, all, that's also a classroom as well. And we have to treat that as a classroom. So let's create a sustainable, scalable model utilizing existing systems that are already housed in our departments of social work. And so I've developed a curriculum, and I've given a preview here of what this practice application curriculum looks like. So at present, there's 5 modules. Familiarizing ourselves with the course is obviously the welcome module here, but we'll look at really an extension of what this entire presentation is on. And it's that put into a faculty training and how it manifests in higher education, how these hostile environments manifest and what faculty can do in the moment. Now, as a social work student, I know that textbooks say a lot of things, and then I get in practice and I'm like, my book did not talk about what I'm experiencing right now. And so we want to kind of we want to bring the real world into faculty understanding of what's going on. And so identifying how it impacts retention in social work is necessary. Identifying signs of minority stress, developing practical strategies to create supportive classroom environments through trauma-informed approaches. Moving on, we've got additional details here, module 3, 4, and 5. So how do we design curriculum? This even extends beyond just the classroom setting into how can we utilize curriculum and classroom practices to affirm diverse identities. Now, going back a little bit, I should have mentioned this before, but this Safe SEAL training, supporting academic flourishing for everyone training, is a little bit undercover, okay? Don't let anyone in on our secret, okay? But it's an undercover way because it does have tertiary impacts of impacting more than just LGBTQ students, right? If faculty have additional training on how to identify and stop oppressive language in the classroom, hands-on, it's going to impact more than just LGBTQ students. It's going to impact uh, individuals that are affirming, those that just want peace and harmony. So there's several macro implications to this as well. So what do faculty get from actually participating in this training? Well, it yields Safe Seal, which is seen on the left here. And this is a certification that can be used in email signatures, office spaces, course materials, as a symbol of commitment and to student success and academic inclusivity. Again, this is through the lens of minority stress and retention theories, but it impacts students at large. Programs can elect to have a directory of faculty who have completed the SAFE training to promote transparency of faculty members who have completed the training, enhancing visibility, which takes us back to that model of the upside down pyramid there. The Safe Seal training provides additional information on understanding minority stress, on student retention and academic attrition, how to confront minority stress in classroom settings, identifying and implementing trauma-informed approaches, as we mentioned, inclusive and affirming teaching strategies. So more than just stopping oppressive language, are we considering in programs of social work the type of research that students are reading? Are programs feeling like they do have to warn students that they're going to cover LGBTQ content before they actually show up to class? Is that something that we need to be concerned about? Or is this something that needs further normalization and just feeling like it's part of the curriculum? So I believe firmly that the Supporting Academic Flourishing for Everyone program will be the catalyst for programs to reconsider curriculum. There's pretty rigorous guidelines for CSWE curriculum, but this is necessary to examine in our programs. And then we want to look at sustaining long-term commitment to equity-driven solutions in higher education. And I'm a social worker, so I abide by the National Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics. This is a scalable model that could be easily transformed into programs of psychology, biology, you name it. If we just swap out some of the language, it can be easily scaled to other disciplines. This is another one of those maps that we look at if you're a visual learner, but it's directly rooted in theoretical foundations and key concepts that we talked about to impact student engagement. It seeks to reduce re-traumatization in the classroom and increased engagement, which is part of the scholarship of teaching and learning, making sure that we're focused on these retention and student success theories that promote inclusion. So some of the things that will enhance skill development include interactive case studies, simulations, real-world applications specific to the college ecosystem, as we mentioned. And then the impact includes reduction in minority stress. That's what we're aimed at. And as there's a reduced minority stress, we're looking at increased social inclusion, which on that hierarchy of the reconceptualized model, we want students to remain matriculated and graduate. So some of the factors to consider, and we're down here right now, how do we embed this safe seal training into faculty onboarding? These are kind of considerations for future review. For tenure review, onboarding, is this something that we can implement? Pushback among other departments that may not feel that this is necessary, that also, the institution at large may have pushback about this model. And we mentioned that it can be applied to social work, education, practice, and other disciplines. So some of you may have noticed that the title of my presentation mentioning straight A's, and it's kind of a play on words here, but academic achievement is more than earning straight A's. It embodies the campus experience. It embodies peer relations, how we connect with faculty, and then building towards career readiness and competence. That is, if you ask social work professors, and I have, that is what we're after, is building resilient social workers to go on and do good work in the field. And so if pre-programmed social workers never make it past the first 2 years, they are unlikely to go on and be those social workers. I am going to take a second, and before we reflect on the content of this presentation, I want to give you a bird's eye view of everything that I've just talked about, so that we can kind of, if we were in person, I would probably print this out and say, hand it to you on the way out the door. But this is the 3 bodies of work that I have written in the manuscript, put onto a slide here. So we started with the systematic literature review, the SLR, looking at minority stress impact on pre-major students in 4-year universities. We discussed the results, leading us to several frameworks that are at play here. The conceptual paper then takes that and reconceptualizes these 3 frameworks into a novel framework that is used to address attrition in higher education. And it highlights the intersectional focus on LGBTQ student identity, social inclusion as a vital aspect of the academic and professional processes, and it's a constructivist reinterpretation of self-actualization. What self-actualization looks like for someone may not be someone else's goal, and that's okay. But what a commonality, the common thread throughout the research is LGBTQ students crave connection as they enter into higher academic institutions. And when they are left with feeling isolated and alone, it has a collateral effect on their academic performance, because they feel like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this alone? So interventions to be developed through a minority lens offers new insight and conversations to individuals who have never experienced overt proximal and distal stressors in higher education firsthand. And together, this bridges the gap in theory and in practice for social work faculty to adopt a trauma-informed model that impacts their teaching and learning to improve mental health and retention of these social work students. And so we're looking at the safe seal training. These are some of the things that can withstand DEI and institutional changes, including mentorship, visibility. And a lot of these things are not tangible, things that can be taken away. Despite funding changes, despite political changes, mentorship can persist. Visibility can happen. It doesn't require students to disclose identity if they're not comfortable, but rather flips the script that students can find faculty when they feel comfortable to do so, if they know that they're a safe faculty to seek out for mentorship. This program can be embedded in social work programs and also be easily altered to other programs as well. Specifically, I'm thinking more so in the social sciences, but in the literature, there's been similar things with programs in medical schools and biology, interestingly enough. And so faculty earn the authenticity seal to be displayed. Again, it's inclusive in nature. And the outcomes include early stage faculty engagement, mitigation of minority stress before crisis. So it takes a preventative approach, and it utilizes resources that are often present already in social work departments if there's online programming available. All right, so I'm gonna try to see if I can figure out my Zoom poll. So I'm gonna do a little conclusion reflection here. So after today, I feel more prepared to identify ways minority stress shows up in the real world around me. So 0 would be not very confident. 5 would be pretty confident here. And as some more individuals I answer here, I just want to for us to reflect on how are we showing up and I'm going to make this more broad beyond social work education. How are we showing up for colleagues? How are we showing up for people in the workplace, people in the community? I'm going to end the poll and share the results here. I am very, very happy to see that the majority of us feel pretty confident. Think about how we can continue to show up for individuals that may be experiencing minority stress. It really is something that is behind the veil that is not easily identified. And so let us consider how we can continue to show up. Before I move on to any questions or comments, I want to just acknowledge some folks that have been integral for this process. This is a really big day where, I mean, this is it. I mean, after this, I'm going on a cruise. All right. So some acknowledgments to my family and my best friend, Annika, who have supported me every step of my academic journey, literally from day one, BSW, Social Work 101. I couldn't have done it without y'all. It's literally my wildest dream coming true that I get to do this. To my WKU family, mentors, and most trusted role models, thank you for believing in me from day one. I truly honor my Hispanic heritage with this achievement. It really is a symbol of what's possible with generations of faith, love, and sacrifice, and how that takes form today. I have some other acknowledgments. My colloquium crew, for those of you that are not familiar, colloquium is our class that we do all of our writing and research. And I have had the pleasure to work with Dr. Richardson, Dr. Lipschitz, Dr. Darva, Dr. Erica, also Dr. Nick, Dr. Magruder, Dr. Renee, Dr. Brennan. At the University of Kentucky, I am just so thankful for Dr. Hips, who has been a mentor just throughout the whole thing. I mean, thank you for texting me 2 summers ago saying get the systematic literature review book because you need to read that thing like it's your Kindle and make sure that you are studying that. Dr. Starwalt assisted with the conceptual paper. Dr. Gold is my colloquium mentor. And then our program director, Dr. Escobar Ratliff. And then from Western Kentucky University, Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Griffiths, and Dr. DeRozier, I'm just so thankful for your leadership and for your mentorship and for the way that you show up for students every single day. I have always wanted to be just like you all, and I would like to think that I get to carry on the type of mentorship that you've given me to future generations of social workers. So to the entire Department of Social Work, thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, a brief dedication. This is for my grandma who we lost here in late February, but I'm just so thankful for her always saying that things would always work out. It did. We are here and we are proud and we are just um, so happy to be here. So I am going to open the floor for any questions, comments. There's my email there. If you are just so passionate about reading like 300 pages of literature, I'm your guy. Let me know. I've worked very hard on it, and I'm happy to forward that. But any questions?
I'll help you monitor the chat, Johnny.
Thank you. Yes.
We got some good stuff here. Way to go. Thank you, Johnny, for this amazing presentation and for your work on this thesis project. Well done. Congratulations on your accomplishments. Enjoy your cruise. Have to hop off for another meeting. Excellent job. Look at those doctors. Well done, Johnny. Thanks for repping our conversation circle. Congratulations. Excellent job. You did it. Keep posting on social media and sharing awareness about our profession. Awesome job, Johnny. Appreciate you. Whoop, so proud. So proud of you, Johnny. You are a daily inspiration. Honored to know you. Incredible. And then Dr. Silva. Excellent. Congratulations. Thank you for sharing such needed info.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. This is awesome.
Awesome job. Your research will make a difference. I'm so glad you were in my BSW class. We will never forget that pandemic year. Congratulations, Dr. Johnny Silva. I appreciate your hard work on this important project. You deserve all the best. Then we got some hand claps.
Yes, yes, hand claps. I've got two screens. I'm not ignoring you. I'm looking at the screen here. Awesome.
So proud of you. Love you, brother, Dr. Silva.
Thank you all so much. So much. The kind words mean the world. I have been, yeah, especially for those that see me often in person. This is an online program, but I'm just so thankful for the people that see me in person and kept me on track. And then all the folks that are in my virtual circles as well that have been so important in this.
Congratulations, Johnny.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm putting a picture of you and Grandma on.
Oh, yes. All right. I don't even know how to do that. My mom's like figuring that out. Okay. Beautiful. Well, oh yeah, there it is. If you see iPhone 2, that's a picture of my grandma. Yes.
Awesome.
Um, very good. For those of you that are just in want to know if everything that I said is true, here are my references. I promise I did the research. This is all my own work. I attest. I am just so thankful. Thank you everyone for spending your time with me. If anyone wants to hang back a little bit after, just let us know in the chat, but thank you. And if you want CEU credits, just make sure that you did register on ceu.uky.edu.
Hey,
Thank you, everyone.
but before everyone goes, thank you so much for attending this amazing presentation. It was an honor to have worked with Johnny in his MSW program to serve as a mentor and encourager every so often as I can. To do that, this presentation was an awesome culmination of all the hard work that he has put in over the past 2 years in his DSW program. I'm super proud of him. So please join me in congratulating Dr. Silva. on this amazing achievement.
It doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't feel real, but here we are. I'm excited to support. If you're another DSW colleague here, I will be, yes, I'll be behind you later throughout the day. I'm working on getting this published. No worries. Don't be spilling all my secrets now. Thank you all. Share. Thank you all.
Want me to go ahead and stop the recording?
Oh, yeah. I'm like, I thought I did that. Here we go. 4.